وربك فارغب فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب صدق الله العظيم. فاتحة. دعاء.
So we're just going to have the adhan break, inshallah, make adhan, and then we'll start, inshallah.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Alhamdulillah, the Sheikh is here. Otherwise, we had to probably do some like Space Jam poetry remix.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I mean, we can technically still do some Space Jam poetry and remix if that's what we need. First of all, I apologize for being delayed. It's totally not the host's fault. It was my fault. I got held up in a conversation that took longer than I had expected. May Allah bless you all, reward you all. Secondly, may Allah bless you all, reward you all for coming out, and inshallah make this a gathering that is of benefit for all of us, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد النبي العالمين الذي اسمه مكتوبا في الإنجيل والتوراة أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والذين جاهدوا فينا لنهدينهم سبلنا وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يا أبا سفيان جئتكم بكرامة الدنيا وخير الآخرة أسلم تسلم أو كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. My dear brothers, sisters, elders and youngsters, the Prophet ﷺ, going through all the different ups and downs and highs and lows and trials and tribulations that he had to experience throughout his life, one would think that perhaps the sun will never rise for him. One would think, based on the topic that we have, that there will be no form of comfort, there will be no form of support, there will be no form of solace in this world, because how could you tell a child that was born without a father that there is comfort in this world? How could you tell a child that lost his mother at the age of 5 that there is comfort and love in this world? How could you tell this man who gave so much for this deen, that buried 6 of his 7 children, that there is comfort in this world? How could you tell someone who lived through a year of sorrow that there is truly comfort in this world? Rather, in every way you would notice that there's actually no comfort in this world. That how is there comfort if I have no children to return back to? Where is there comfort if I have no mother to be able to rely upon? Where is there comfort if I have no father whose advice that can support me in the different trials and movements of life? There is no comfort. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ would experience at times. That will the sun rise? Will there be support? Will there be comfort? And the answer to that question is given in the beautiful surah in Surah Al-Duha, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالضُّحَى. And He swears by the light of the morning, the light of the morning sun, quite literally, that there will be light. And there will be a sense of support. There will be a sense of comfort. And others refer to وَالضُّحَى as in the tafsir of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, that I swear by the light upon your face, that you are the source of comfort for the world. As the rest of the world is looking for a sense of solace, a sense of comfort, a sense of support, you will become that for people. Because everyone is searching for it. And very few are able to become that for others, which in turn is what supports them as well. The Prophet ﷺ was not always seen smiling because he was happy. If we were to undo the veils between us and him, we don't see a happy person looking back at us. We would see a person who was content with life. So the smile that he was able to hold was not symbolic about how he felt. It was more so symbolic on what he wanted you to experience. His goal of life was to use his presence to bring benefit to the people that were around him. Therefore, they were able to completely surrender themselves in their desires to the Prophet ﷺ, because they realized that this person has no incentive from us. Rather, we have all the incentive from him. So what duha is also a form of the understanding of it is also that the support is from you. Why is it so that I am always seeking it from people? Why can I become a source of it? Well, Allah speaks about the people who are known as munafiqs by saying, خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ هَلُوعًا إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرُّ جَزُوعًا وَإِذَا مَسَّهُ الْخَيْرُ مَنُوعًا. As some people are such, these human beings are created in a sense of anxiety and haste. Hala'. And this hala' means that whenever harm touches them, the slightest touch of harm makes them become very anxious. They start seeking sympathy from the world. They want everyone to know about their harms and challenges. Not that we should never mask our emotions, but they will take it to a point that at every turn, that will be an excuse for them to have a flaw in their character. Hey, why are you not meeting me like this? Well, you don't know what I've gone through, that's why. Why are you speaking like that? Why is there such a sporadic spectrum in your responses to people? That sometimes you're like this and sometimes you're like that. Or it's because of what I'm going through. Because the munafiq will dictate their responses and their spiritual emotions based upon their situations. And a believer will dictate all of those based upon their ethics and values. So there will never be such a sporadic spectrum. It will be confined to an area which is justifiable. This makes sense because you are going through what you are going through, and we're only humans, that it does impact us. وَإِذَا مَسَّهُ الْخَيْرُ مَنُوعًا. And when goodness comes to them, they don't want anyone to know about it. They want to keep it for themselves, and they don't want no one to benefit from it because they're worried about the fact that if others benefit from it, would it take away from them? And the opposite of that is وَالضُّحَى. That if we wish to find comfort, and if we wish for there to be a sense of ease in our life, it's cyclical. There's a cyclical nature that Allah has allowed for it to be there for us to benefit. That if we want comfort, am I a source of comfort for someone else? If we want ease, am I a source of ease for someone else? The Prophet says that if you want to be forgiven, forgive others. Irhamu turhamu. Ighfiru yaghfir Allahu lakum. If I wish to be forgiven, the process and the prerequisite is, can I forgive others? Where this person is sitting and bawling their eyes out, seeking forgiveness for their sins, but the slightest prick and thorn that came in their way because of someone else, this person has yet to forgive, then where in the world will they be able to experience Allah's forgiveness? Because Allah's forgiveness is confined within our hearts, softening towards people. Allah's forgiveness is limited in the sense that, of course, is never limited, but to the point in my existence and in my life is limited in me being able to forgive others. And if I'm unable to open up my heart and forgive people, despite the fact that it's hard because it's supposed to be hard, that's why it's so rewarding, then Allah's forgiveness is also harnessed back. Irhamu turhamu. It's cyclical. When a person says, how can I be such that despite my flaws, Allah hides them? How can Allah hide my flaws? Because truly, we only want Allah to judge us simply because He's the most forgiving. But if Allah wasn't the most forgiving, Allah would have been the harshest judge because He knows everything. Like, we would rather have people judge us. You know, people say, only Allah can judge me. I'm like, yeah, that's actually pretty scary. Because if people could judge me, I'm comfortable. Because they only see what I showed them. They only know what I exposed to them. So if people were to judge me, then Jannah would have been an easy, straightforward, one-way ticket. Because it's not hard to put a front. But the fact that Allah is the one judging me, as hopeful as it is, it's also equally scary. Where He says, يَعْلَمُ مَا تُخْفِي الصُّدُورِ. I know what is happening in your mind and heart. Like, I own your real estate. I know exactly what you're thinking about, where your mind is going, where your heart is inclined towards. I won't question you for it, but I know what it is and I know where it is. And the only way that it becomes empowering that Allah will judge us is because He's the most merciful. Or else it would have been very challenging to live with that idea that Allah is the only one that can judge us. So He says, if a person says, how can I remain secure in the movements of life despite my flaws? Because everyone has flaws. كُلُّ ibn Adam خَطَّاء. And if we didn't have flaws, then we should be somewhere else with angels. Every single one of us have sins. But how can I be comfortable with those flaws and mistakes, knowing that I am seeking tawbah? How can I live in a comfortable state, knowing that these things might challenge my children, challenge my family? Allah made it very simple. مَنْ سَتَرَ عَيْبَ أَخِيهِ سَتَرَهُ اللَّهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. It's cyclical. That if you want Allah to hide your mistakes, then learn how not to speak about people's mistakes. Learn how not to jump on the trend of backbiting without noticing that you're backbiting by justifying that I'm speaking about their harm to protect other people, whilst you're speaking about that person's harm or that person's mistake in the same gathering to the same people over and over again. Like, how many times do they need to know about that person's mistake to protect themselves from their harm? It's not necessarily to protect the harm or to protect them from the harm. It's more so to make ourselves feel comfortable with the lack of spiritual growth that we've had, because we want to feel comfortable where we are, knowing that they are lower than us. And that's why the Prophet would always tell us that if a person wants to be an individual that is shakir and sabir, khaslatani man kanata fihi, the greatest heights that a human being can reach in this world is sabir and shakir. Sabir and shakir. And some would argue shakir is greater, others would argue sabir is greater, which is a different discussion. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah concludes that the shakir is far better than the sabir. Because a sabir is a person who just has to hold back. Habsun nafs. Like I have to hold back and, restrain myself. My tongue, my body, my facial expressions. But a shakir is a person that sees that difficulty to actually be a form of a blessing. And he's grateful for it to Allah. Like the prophets were. So it's a higher station. But nonetheless, the highest stations are sabir and shakir. This is what the Prophet says, that عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ إِنَّ أَمْرَهُ كُلَّهُ لَهُ خَيْرٌ. That beautiful is the affair of a believer. How beautiful is the affair of a believer that every movement and aspect of their life is better for them. It's actually a form of reward for them. It's like the boss saying that, it doesn't matter if you come late or come early, you're still getting a promotion. Like, bro, then why would I come early? Right? It's like the professor saying, it doesn't matter how good you do in your exam, you're still gonna get moved up to the next year. It doesn't matter what happens. So Allah is saying to us, it doesn't matter what happens to you in your life, as long as a state that you have is one of these two, you're good to go. Allah does not necessarily gauge us based upon our action alone. He gauges us based upon our state. Because the state is the intended outcome, not the act itself. Many, Prophet says, رُبَّ صَائِمٍ لَيْسَ لَهُ مِنْ صِيَامِهِ إِلَّا الْجُوعُ وَرُبَّ قَائِمٍ لَيْسَ لَهُ مِنْ قِيَامِهِ إِلَّا السَّهَرُ. He says, there are many people who fast in the month of Ramadan but gain nothing from it except for hunger. And many stand for tahajjud but gain nothing from it except for tiredness and exhaustion, because the state that is intended from it is not achieved. And the space that we fill and the state that we have is not always coinciding and synonymous. It's very possible that the space that I fill has not impacted the state of my heart. There were people who prayed next to the Prophet ﷺ. Like we just came back from Hajj a few weeks ago. Like, I don't know if you can be in a higher state of iman than being around the blessed resting place of our Habib ﷺ. Like, that is your Mount Rushmore of iman. Like, you're at the peak. And of course, seeing the Kaaba and Hajj. Imagine praying with him, being in that gathering where his presence is, where the Sahabas are. But the state of your heart is completely numb of any reality of iman. And that was the state of the munafiqun. They filled the space. And if that was the goal, to fill the space, then we've already won we've already succeeded in the journey. But the goal was to be able to achieve a state of iman, of taqwa, of strength and fortitude within our faith, regardless of what is happening around us. And there are many people who didn't have the ability to fill that space, but they were given the state, like Uwais al-Qarni and other tabi'un. Similarly, we see in our lives, there are people who live in the most comfortable spaces, but the state of the heart is filled in anxiety, unrest, this level of distaste of life, not because they don't have what they were pursuing, but they were simply pursuing the wrong thing. And it's not even their fault, because they were never exposed to this. And if you weren't exposed to it, how would you know how beautiful it is? And we're blessed that we're exposed to it. And what a loss it would be that despite the fact that we're exposed to it, we're running the wrong direction. That's what the opposite of Salat al-Mustaqim is. And there are many we've seen in Gaza. Allah bring ease to our brothers and sisters in Gaza, but also all across the world. That you ask, we have our friends that go there, Dr. Abdul Aziz, many of our friends in Michigan, some of our students that were able to go there as physicians. And they come back and tell you that you ask those people how you're doing, and they will respond by saying Alhamdulillah, because it's the only response they have. It's not because they're not feeling the pain of what they're going through. Like, oh, okay, at least they're saying Alhamdulillah. No, that's the only response that they can have. Nothing else is even an option, right? So when they smile and say Alhamdulillah, you realize that the state of their heart is filled with peace, though their space is filled with the rubbish and rubbles. So our goal is not to necessarily fill a space. Our goal is to be able to reach a state that now allows us to keep that state in every space. That our iman is not endangered to be extinct because of a space that we fill. Rather, that space and whatever it contains will be endangered by my presence of faith. قُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلُ. The Prophet said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whenever the truth presents itself, batil will naturally vanish, because they can't stand in front of the truth. The truth is always the loudest voice in the room. It will always win because batil knows it's batil. If someone was wearing like fake Nike shoes, right, like from Pakistan, or the Pakistan fakes are like really fake. Like the swoosh is like the opposite way. But the Chinese guys got it right. Like their swoosh is almost perfect. But if that person who had like, I don't know, Jordan 1s, and there's a person who has a real Jordan 1s, that day the other person will make sure they don't wear it. They'll make sure they don't wear it. If we have some friends who drive Beamers, Hafiz Faisal and Sheikh Hassan, you guys, we love Beamers. They it's not an M, it's like a 530, whatever it would be, but they put an M sticker on it, and they would put the M package, the M trim. And people like us that know the difference between M's and non-M's, sorry, this is a random example, they'll make sure not to drive in front of our cars because they'll get exposed. That's the same when it comes to the ultimate objective truth, which is not relative to anyone's opinion, which is a faith. That when this haqq appears, if I enter into a gathering as a manifestation of the truth as a believer, that's the greatest display of the truth. I'm a believer. And people are backbiting and they don't stop. I have to either question whether or not I'm truly a display of the truth or whether or not they see me to be that. Because if they're still doing it, that means al-haqq hasn't appeared. Similarly, if I sit in a car and someone's listening to whatever they're listening to and I sit and they just continue listening, am I really a manifestation of the truth? Because if I was, they would at least flinch. They would hesitate, as you would do in front of people who display the truth in any other realm of life. So to go back to what I was originally saying, that if a person wishes to feel comfortable in their flaws, they have to hide other people's mistakes. This is the only way it works. If I want to be forgiven, I have to forgive people. If I want to be hidden in regards to my flaws, I have to hide other people's flaws. If I want to be helped, everyone in today's time is worried about their rights. How do I get my rights? And they're all worried about what their actual responsibilities are. How do I make sure that I don't do anything more? So I want all my rights, and I only want to do what my responsibility is, which is actually the complete opposite of ihsan. Ihsan in ibadah, in worship, means to worship Allah as if you can see Him, and if you can't see Him, know that He can see. أَنْتَ عَبْدُ اللَّهِ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. That is the definition of ihsan when it comes to worship. But that is not the definition of ihsan when it comes to conduct and character. It's completely different. In terms of conduct and character, Imam Ghazali rahimahullah says, ihsan is أن تعطيه أكثر مما تستحق أو تسأل وتأخذ أقل مما تستحق. Imam Ghazali rahimahullah would say the definition of ihsan when it comes to me being a spouse, a son, a daughter, a parent, a community member is this. And if we were just to apply this into our marriages, it would change a lot. The definition of ihsan is to always give more than what that person deserves. And to give more than what that person has asked for. So they asked for A, I give them A and B. That's ihsan. The expectation was for me to give them only this, and I gave them a little bit more. That is called ihsan. And this is displayed greatly and continuously in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. Like for example, he was asked about the dream that the king saw of the 7 cows that were eaten by 7 skinny cows. And the question was, interpret the dream for us. What did he do? What did he do? He interpreted the dream and? What did anyone? They told me people in Tampa, like you guys have USF and intelligent people, like where is it at? But they also told me you're very humble, so it makes sense. Humility, right? He gave them the interpretation and he gave them the what? Solution. The first time was that he gave them the solution. They came and asked, can you please tell me what this dream means? And he said, yes, I can, and I'll tell you how to fix it. I'll give you the entire solution. What we would do is, brother, you're a mechanic and my car's making this noise. It seems like this is the issue with it. The next question. In our system, we want you to beg to ask all the follow-up questions to show our superiority over you in that science. Okay, well, where do I find it? Where do I find the product from? You have to go there and find it. Okay. Where do I go to fix it? Go there to fix it. Brother, couldn't you just have said the first time that your brakes are messed up? You can go to this store to buy them, and you can go to that store to fix them, and you can go at this time because it's the cheapest time where there's no line and you will get the best deal. That is ihsan. Not to make, you can telegraph the person's questions before they ask because you love them. It's impossible to have ihsan for people who you don't love. It's not even an option for a person because you won't be able to telegraph their questions. Rather, you will be able to block out their questions because you have absolutely no attachment to them. That's why Imam Zayd rahimahullah would say that in order for you to even have in order for you in a religious sense to feel comfortable giving advice to someone, the prerequisite is that you love them. And if you don't love them, don't give them advice. It's not that every time I see evil, I should stop it. No, every time you see evil, and if you have love for the person, then you can stop it. Or else you telling them that it's wrong or right will have no impact in their life. It's like, but they don't listen to me. It's because you don't love them. How was it so that Sahabas were able to leave the most difficult things in their life the moment they heard it was impermissible? Because they understood how much the Prophet loved them. And to make him feel uncomfortable or disappointed was their biggest fear of life. So now if I'm a person that wants others to help me, I want to be comfortable, I need support. Everyone wants support. Well, the Prophet also gave us the perfect blueprint for that. And it goes back to what I started with, is cyclical. Where he says, Inna Allah fi awni al-abdi ma kana abdu fi awni akhi. That Allah will continue being there to support an individual as long as this person is helping someone else. As long as, this is conditional, this is not an add-on, it's not supplementary. It's conditional. That a person will only receive the amount of help from Allah as the amount of help they are providing to people around them. Of course, not at the same extent, but at their capacity. We're not questioned for our output, we're not questioned for our output of impact, we're questioned for our output of effort. So the amount of effort this person is making to help people is what creates the support of Allah in their life. Whereas everyone wants support from people, but no one wants to support anyone else. And then we ask, why is Allah's dua, why is Allah's support not coming to me in my family? Because everyone's selfishness has gotten the better of them in capitalism, where I even calculate the way I shake people's hands. Like my hand, people's handshakes are calculated. Right? They shake your hand based upon what you can give them or what they can make you feel. And the invite lists in their homes are calculated. Whereas the Prophet ﷺ was not shaking people's hands to take from them, he was shaking their hands to give them. And therefore he was the last person to move his chest away. It's like when someone calls you, are you the first person that presses end, or is the other person the first person who presses end? Like one of my teachers, whenever he calls, it's always very awkward because like he doesn't, like someone goes like, just press end. And I want to be respectful of him, so I don't want to close the phone on him, shut the call. But he follows the sunnah to the T that he will not move his chest until you move your chest. So he will not press the end button until you press it. So it makes you feel like, well, I want to have iman too though. I want to be the one. And he says, well, if you want to be the one, you should be the one calling me. Because the Prophet also said, whoever starts saying salam first is the one who has more faith. And this is a reality. That if I'm the one, Prophet also spoke about the idea of feeling peace in your homes. Where he says, Afshu salam, tadkhulul jannata bis salam. That if you're a person who spreads peace, quite literally by saying assalamu alaikum, by being the first person who initiates a conversation, and then also spreads peace in the figurative sense that your presence is not annoying or irritating to people, and you're not necessarily always coming upon them to become an obstacle for them, but rather a support for them. And Allah will give us salam on the day of judgment as well. Prophet says, Al-mu'minu kan-nahla. The believer is like a honeybee. It's a very interesting hadith. The believer is like a honeybee. Right? Anyone want to guess why? Any thoughts? There's no wrong answer. Of course there is, but we'll act like it's a relative answer. Anyone? What? Express goodness. Okay, good. Makes sense. Anyone else? Sisters? Brothers? So much humility. Allah. Blessing? Okay. They're all right answers. Kan nahla, and Ibn Hajar rahimahullah comments on this by saying, this is why the entire Surah An-Nahl is there, right? It is a beautiful surah that talks about the believer and the honeybee. And it comes in between the discussions of a believer's qualities. So, number one, a honeybee, when it sits on a flower or a plant, it doesn't actually sit on it. It hovers above it, where it will never break a petal. So even when it's taking from the flower, it will not become a burden on the flower. It will always to an extent or to a distance that doesn't overwhelm the flower. It's really interesting. Like if I'm taking some benefit from you, I shouldn't overwhelm you. That's what the Prophet said, that you can be a guest in someone's house for 3 days. That's a nahla. Like that's a honeybee. Number two, the honeybee always takes but also gives back. It never just takes. It's never just a receiver. الْيَدُ الْعُلْيَا خَيْرٌ مِّن يَدِ السُّفْلَى. The hand that is above is always better than the hand that is below, not for the sake of just giving fundraising and donations, but the hand that is giving. It's always in the state of wanting to give, whether or not that is financially or socially or just the psychological reserve, but they're always giving, is always better than the person who's always wanting to be a receiver. They always want to be a receiver. A believer has this ghira, this self-respect, that they don't always want to be a receiver. They want to be a giver. And if we're not a giver, then indeed that is more of a quality of a munafiq. That munafiq will not go into the battle, but they'll come for the spoils of war. Like, it's not like they won't come for the actual like effort, but they'll show up for the dinner. No, I'm not referring to our gatherings, but that's the idea of it, right? I know you guys are going to be judging people. Shouldn't have used that example. But that's number two, an-nahla. And number three, the Prophet says that even an-nahla, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah says the third reason why it's called a believer like a nahla, that example is shown by the Prophet, is that this honeybee, even if you throw it into a dump yard of just junk, it will find something pure to sit upon. It will look for what? A pure flower, a pure plant, even though it's all junk. And the opposite of that is a fly. That even if the Prophet said that a munafiq is like a fly, like a dhubab. Al-munafiq ka-dhubab. A munafiq is like a fly. Because even if there's all, like the fly is like, it's dirty, right? Like even if you have everything pure in that area, you will find some filth to sit upon. And why that's interesting is because a honeybee, a believer is a honeybee, even if you have 99 flaws, this honeybee will sit upon your one good quality. And it will attach itself to that good quality. It will find goodness in you. Like the Prophet was able to find goodness in his companions, though the world saw them to be write-offs. That's a believer. They're able to find it because they know you have it. And the munafiq's like a fly. That despite all the good qualities this person has, they'll just what? Find that one negativity, one negative quality within that person. Now, this should not be projected upon people. This is what we do in our gatherings. Every time we speak about qualities of this person or that person, we always start thinking in our mind about Khadija, Fatima, and Zayd and Ahmed. Like, yeah, man, I knew like a munafiq. No. This is why progress becomes very limited. When the Prophet was speaking about these qualities, every single Sahaba was thinking about themselves. Like, do I have this? And how can I make sure that I'm distancing myself from these qualities as best as I can? So, Allahu fi auni al-abd ma kana al-abdu fi auni akhi. Allah will be in the support of people as long as you're in the support of other people, and that's how comfort comes in this world. That's how support comes in this world. It didn't come because of resources. It came because of being able to support one another in their difficulties. And Allah brought ease to them while they were struggling in their moments. And this cyclical nature also comes, and I have a few minutes left and I'll finish up and wrap up here. It also comes to the discussion of today, that how will I be able to see a sense of ease in my life? It most definitely will come when I become a source of ease for other people in their life. وَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِهِمْ لَوْ أَنفَقْتَ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا مَا أَلَّفْتَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِهِمْ. Yes, there's a spiritual element to it. Knowing that Allah is with us is what allows us to be like that. It's impossible for a person to be in that state if they don't have a relationship with Allah. Because that relationship is what anchors them, and what allows them to be so giving and so selfless is because they already have what they need. A person can only be selfless and generous if they have what they need. How can a person give wealth in the path of Allah? Because they have wealth for their families. How can a person be so selfless in life? Is because they have Allah. This is why you learn in the Quran and all the stories of the idea of when will the sun rise, when these people were locked up in their backs against the wall. I'll give you just one example and we'll end. Musa alayhi salam, in his story, when he was escaping from the Pharaoh and his army, and they ended up falling in front of, we'll talk about this tonight inshallah in the actual class at Darussalam Mufti Kamani. You guys are all coming, of course. I'm not even going to ask, inshallah. If you're not, do istighfar from now, right? But nonetheless, the story is where these people are stuck in front of a sea, and the army is right behind them. And Bani Israel were like, the simplest way to define them is they were Muslims when it was convenient. Right? They were believers when it was convenient. Manna and Salwa is here, I'm Muslim. Right? There's a sea in front of me, oh my God, I ain't doing this. And may Allah protect us. Right? Convenience is found in the obedience of Allah. That's where convenience is found. Like it was convenient. Ibrahim a.s. found convenience in him leaving his wife and son in Makkah al-Mukarramah, not because it was easy, because they understood, Inna Allah ma'ana. So in this moment, Bani Israel looked upon Musa a.s. and said, you really screwed us over this time. Like literally, Inna lamudrakun. We are finished. You really messed up this time. And Musa a.s. looks upon them and says, Kalla. Like, no way. Inna ma'iya rabbi sayahdeen. And I want us to focus on this. He didn't say how they will be saved. In America, especially in this age of everyone having such great rationale and their intellectual abilities are so high, everyone is trying to figure out the how though. Like, how will I be saved? How will I be able to be successful? How will I become a leader? How will this happen? How will that happen? The how we find from the Quranic approach is not within our responsibility. It's not within the scope of what Allah will ask us for. He didn't say how he will be saved because it's not within his capacity. Neither is it what he will be questioned for. He simply responded by saying, who will save him? And that's how the sun rises. He said, Inna ma'iya rabbi. Allah is with me. And He will surely guide me. I'm comfortable not because I know what's going to happen, but I know regardless of what happens, He is the one that wanted it for me. Inna ma'iya rabbi sayahdeen. In the Surah Al-Duha, what I started with, which literally means the sun will rise, the Prophet ﷺ, when he went through the difficulty of being abused by the Quraysh after becoming a prophet, Allah says to him, مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. Your Lord has never left you, neither will He ever be upset at you. The real question is, have we forsaken Allah? Not has Allah forsaken me. Because if He had forsaken me, we would not be here today. But even in that surah, Allah doesn't say, I'm giving you a plan. I'm with you in a few years, you go to Medina, and then you come back to Fath Makkah. He simply says, know that I have never left you, neither will I ever leave you. The understanding that Allah is still with me was their form of solace and comfort that became the idea of the sun is risen for them. وَالضُّحَى. The Prophet when he was in Ghar al-Thawr, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and the Meccans are looking for him, and they're ready to, if they find him dead or alive, you get the reward of a camel's weight of gold. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu says that while I'm inside of this cave, I look above and I see that the Meccans have reached the mouth of the cave. And I look upon the Prophet and say, Ya Rasulullah, لو نظر تحت قدميه لأبصرنا. If they simply look down beneath their feet, they will find us. They don't need like night vision goggles. They don't need like heat sensors. All they have to do is just simply look down. نظر تحت قدميه. Then we are dead. And the Prophet once again, this is the prophetic model. This is the Quranic approach of how these people dealt with difficult moments of their life and how they found ease within those difficult moments. He did not give a solution. He did not say, watch what's going to happen. A spider web is going to come and it's going to build his web around this area and no one's going to see us. Or watch, pigeons are going to put their eggs over here. Just wait. You're going to see the pigeons come right now. Because it's not within his control. He responded by saying, لا تحزن إن الله معنا. Allah is with us. And if Allah is with me, what are you sweating for? It's not within our control. But in whatever he makes of this will be better for us anyways. ما أصابك لم يكن ليخطئك وما أخطأك لم يكن ليصيبك. Whatever hit you was never going to miss us, and whatever missed us was never going to come our way anyways. And that is the greatest statement of Ali radiallahu anhu, that Ibn Abbas says that it was his greatest statement because it brought him so much comfort at the time of the struggles of the Muslims during that period of history. That it was going to happen anyways. And it is not to justify our wrong, but it's to make us feel comfortable with the difficulty that is going on around us, and to give us a sense of, to make us feel anchored, to make us feel stabilized, that the same Allah is with us, and if He is with us, that is truly comfort. This is why we always say when we lose someone, and if anyone has lived through a tragedy, they know that what we are taught to say is Lillahi ma a'ta. Lillahi ma a'ta. Right? In Arabic, grammar, it would have been more suitable for the sake of not creating a level of emphasis. Ma a'ta lillah wa ma akhada lillah. But Allah says, the Prophet taught us to say Lillahi ma a'ta. And Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah says the reason why it's sequenced in this manner is as a reminder that it's Allah who is taking it. And if it's Allah who is taking it, then we shouldn't be worried. Because He loves us and hence He is taking. Imam Ghazali would say, إِعْطَاؤُهُ رَحْمَةٌ وَأَخْذُهُ رَحْمَةٌ. His giving is mercy and His taking is also a form of mercy. So in that moment, we're also taught to remind ourselves that, again, Allah is still, إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ raji'un. And that is where a person is able to experience the sense of comfort in their life, that they are able to recognize not the how, but the who. The who is with me. And as long as that who is clear, and that who is not blurry, then indeed there is nothing but comfort in a person's life. Despite their space, their state is in comfort. Despite their space, their state is in ease. Despite their space, their state is in peace. Not because of what they have and their plans they have, because of who they know they have with them in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel, wa ni'mal mawla, wa ni'mal nasir. Again and again Allah reminds us in the Quran that in the moments of the harshest difficulties, the prophets did not think about the how, they thought about the who. And the reason that we are wavered or we become blurred, we have blurry visions, is that the how doesn't make sense to us. But that was never our responsibility anyways. The how, if we were responsible for the how, then we're limiting Allah's qadr and we're limiting His impact and His power. It's not our responsibility. We leave it to Him, but we do our best to recognize the who. May Allah allow us to understand all of these senses of impact are cyclical in our life. The more we allow others to experience it from us, the more we're able to experience it from Allah. وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. That the more we're able to create a sense of whatever we want in our life for the other person. If we want forgiveness, we do it for other people. If we want wealth, we give it to other people. If we want a sense of comfort, we become that for other people. Whatever we wish to have as a state of the heart in our life, then we must become a source of that for other people. And the more we become a source of it, the more we're able to experience from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet was the most peaceful person because he gave the most peace. He was a person that was always at the peak of permissible happiness because he gave the most happiness to people. And that's the state that we wish to also be in. May Allah bless you all, reward you all, and give us the ability to become that individual in the community and in our families that are able to create this impact within them for a selfish reason, so that we can also earn it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jazakallahu khair. Wa akhu da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakallahu khair. Yeah, no problem, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. So we're going to pray Salat al-Dhuhr right now. And then right after Salah, you're going to have a Q&A session with the Shaykh, inshallah. And we'll also have lunch in the back, inshallah, for everyone. Beef biryani, brought to you by Arham, inshallah. There's a lot of rahmah in it, so it's good. It's a very key ingredient for the recipe. So anyways, so we'll break. For pray Dhuhr, sisters can either pray in the back or on the sister's side. And their brothers, we can just move this table, ping pong table right now, and set up the rows and get ready for Salah. And then convene right after Salah, inshallah, for the Q&A session. Jazakumullah khair. Ping pong, yeah. It's a halal bid'ah. Huh?
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
واعتدلوا. Start the lines, fill the gaps. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So inshallah, we're gonna give our time to pray Sunnah, and then after Sunnah we'll reconvene. And in the back, inshallah, if anyone wants to grab a plate while the Q&A is happening, you can do so. The sisters can send their questions to Sister Joeria, and she'll send them to me. Or you can send them in one of the TMT chats, or you can raise your hand, inshallah. It's no issue, inshallah. So we'll start in a couple of minutes. Jazakumullah khair.
And you guys have set the standard now. Top level dependence and stuff. That's what they're, yeah, I'd love to collaborate. Yeah, maybe we can sponsor some of your events and we can how about one of my customers is staying out of the staying out of both ports. So that's been a I'm down. No, I'm here. Yeah. Okay, maybe have them themselves. Yeah.
It's just like when it's hard, it's an uphill battle. Everyone is here. So I was like, I'm consulting. And then I like a different.
Oh, yeah, have some else.
No. I love building teams. It's a different. Do two different things.
I've been here.
Here.
Where?
It's different when you have a few people.
Oh.
It's all like he's probably good.
How's things helping you, bro? Bro.
My house is literally in the backyard.
I found out recently that he's
My
going
house is literally 2 minutes away from my house.
yeah, so when I call him, but then because I told him, I just send him
No, you know, it's really good.
so the problem is the day they go, the day I know it's my kids come back from Morocco, I'm taking them to control. And like, you know, because they feel the worst days, I'm not going to.
I understand. I honestly believe as a consultant,
But I'm saying,
but when you go in there, institutions first
why are you calling me though?
so I can see what I hate.
No, you know, I'm gonna get my way if I want to. I also
I tried to see if you need anything.
I've been thinking about how to build that flow.
I'm here for you. Bro, there's so many ideas.
Finally got back in my phone.
Oh, using Hassan is like my boy since childhood. It's cool, man. We used to play with water. He's born and raised here.
Listen, come visit me. Look, by the way, you notice I'm wearing this.
I've been here for Dog, we good? Good. You guys can take me? Bring him to your place?
So it's at 3:30. It's by 3:30 max.
Yeah, no, everything will be done before that, inshallah.
Oh, okay.
3 minutes Q&A. We'll try to keep it short.
Yeah, but because we cut the lecture short, so if you want to add something.
I don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Oh, would you like somebody?
What was I? Late.
Assalamu alaikum. So we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to reconvene, inshallah. If anyone wants to grab a plate in the back, we have some on the sister side also. The Sheikh has to leave here by 3:20, 3:30 max, so inshallah, try to take advantage of the time he's here right now. So anyone who wants to start off with the first question, or anyone who wants to start off the Q&A, only takes one person to start, inshallah. You create the flow.
Okay. If no one has a question, it's even better. No, go ahead, sister. Mm. Yeah. That's a great question. Sister asked, how can you help someone who's going through a tragedy or a difficult time, and kind of be of support for them, cheer them up, bring them to gatherings like this. So I mean, I think it depends on what type of difficulty it is. I mean, I think there's Prophet Allah in the Quran talks about min al-ju'i wal khawf wa naqs min al-amwali wal anfusi wa thamarat, the 5 main forms of difficulty. So for example, if the difficulty is in the tragedy of losing a loved one, it's very different than the difficulty of losing a job, because each one has its own trajectory in a sense, in its own scope. But I do believe the commonality between all of them is that they know there's at least someone that's present for them. Presence is what gives them a sense of support. The Prophet ﷺ wasn't always providing solutions to companions that were struggling. That's not also true. He wasn't giving them handouts. He was simply present for them. And they knew that he was present. And what we see from his life ﷺ is that he was always very giving with his presence and his words. So for example, the story of that young boy whose bird had died, the Umayr ma fa'ala an-Nughayr. This incident took place during the thick of the Battle of Khandaq. The Battle of Khandaq is also known as the Battle of Ahzab, which was the most difficult battle for the Sahabas, because there was no pathway to victory, because the trench, and there was no real way to engage, and it was going on for more than about 40 days, and the weather became overwhelming. It was very cold, and we only won the battle because Allah sent a wind, right? So in the middle of this battle, where there's the hadith of Prophet raising his shirt and there's 2 rocks tied to it, this is during the Battle of Khandaq. So there's a lot happening here, and during this time, Umayr, who was the brother of Anas ibn Malik, his bird died. Like just think about it. If I get a ticket today, I'm not asking anyone how their day is. If you ask my brother, why are you so long-faced? You don't know, man. Trust me, I've been through so much today. What have you gone through? I can't know where to start. No, just start. Maybe we'll get somewhere. I got pulled over today by the cop. Man, it's a struggle. Alhamdulillah, he didn't give me a ticket. So what's the issue, man? What's the issue? Why do we always want to be a receiver of people's sympathy and love? Just be a source of it. And it's not, when we lost our brother, rahimahullah, he was 22 years old, and he was about 3-4 years ago now. I remember on the 3rd day after he transitioned from this world, we're 5 brothers. I mean, he was the youngest one. Many of you probably heard his story. After the 3rd day, my mother, us 4 brothers, I mean, you can only imagine, we were extremely close, so we were pretty much decided not to do anything for a little while. Sulking, and everyone deals with tragedy differently. And after the 3rd day, my mother came. She came with 4 qamises ironed. She ironed them and on their hangers, and she threw it. We're all pretty much laying on the same bed, right? She came and she pulled the blanket off and she threw them on the bed. It's hey, 3 days are done. I didn't raise you to be cowards. Get up and go out and be a source of comfort for people. There are people who need you more than you need yourself. Go support them. Go out there, be there. Your students need you. Your community needs you. And that's a reality. The Prophet ﷺ, after the Battle of Uhud, where he lost Hamza and Mus'ab, one of the most difficult days of his life, Aisha radiallahu anha asked the Prophet ﷺ, أَيُّ يَوْمٍ أَشَدُّ عَلَيْكَ? What was the most difficult day of your life? And he said, في Mecca it was Ta'if, and in Medina it was Uhud. Extremely difficult day. But when he came back from Uhud, there was this young girl that was overwhelmed, and she was like a slave. She felt very uneasy. She was restless. She came to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, I need to talk to you. And the Sahabas narrate that this took place as the Prophet was coming back from Uhud. So you can only imagine what is rumbling in his mind. Now, of course, the other person should have more etiquettes. The other person should know better. The other person should be more wary. Yes, all of that is true. But that doesn't justify a lack of conduct from my side. Right? So he went ahead and said to her, hold my hand, خذي يدي وامشي أين تشتهي. Take my hand and walk wherever you want. And I'll walk with you and I'll talk to you as long as you are content. So we find that presence and the kindness of words were the greatest things. Prophet said about what do you do to a person when he's leaving this world? They say, well, just be there and be a source of comfort for them by smiling at them and saying nice things to them. Right? That's it. That's all. At the end of the day, that's all we can do as within our control. And of course, if we can use, creative means and ways to get them out of that slump, we should try our best to do that as well. So, for example, if you know someone really likes good food, right? Well, maybe we use that as a form of pulling them in. If someone really loves water sports, maybe use that as a way of, like, us brothers love water sports. If someone was to tell us to skip a halaqah, we would never do so unless there was a jet ski somewhere. Then we would do so, right? Like that would have been the pull. I'm giving you guys an idea for next time, right? But that's that. You would know. You have to, in order to help that person, you kind of need to know that person too. Then, so and then it's hard to get to know people after they're going through what they're going through because they also put on barriers now, right? So we have to know them before they go through what they go through. I.e., we have to build relationships without an incentive, because you never know when you'll need them or when they will need you. And now, if they're going through what you're going through and you're giving them a hug, that hug probably doesn't mean as much to them if they don't really know you as well and they haven't built a relationship with you, and vice versa. So the insurance policy is build good relationships with people so that when they do go through something, our salam means a little bit more to them. Our call means a little bit more to them. And if you really think about it, how many people are waiting for our call when they go through difficulty? How many people are actually waiting for our call? Like they're waiting. I'm waiting for Zayd to call me. I'm waiting for Aisha to call me. Or are we amongst those that when the call comes, they're like, oh no, this guy's going to make it worse right now. Definitely not picking up this call. He's just going to make it, oh, you got fired because you always came late, right? Like, that's what it's going to be like. It's not going to be like, oh my God, they messed up. No, it's going to be the opposite. So, like, it's really something to think about. How many people are actually waiting for me to call them when they go through tragedy? If that number is very low, that means we haven't built relationships that are non-incentivized, right? Because if there's an incentive, they're not waiting for us to call. They're not waiting for our call because they're worried about us asking for something from them again. So that's, wallahu alam, that would be a short answer, and I hope it brings some support. But in summary, presence, number 2, words, and number 3, getting to build a relationship with them before, so that when they do go through something, our presence means a little bit more to them, and it can give them more than what others can. Allahu a'lam, right? And that was a reality for us as well when we lost our brother. Like people that were close to us that came and supported meant the world to us. Of course, people that didn't really have a relationship with us also meant a lot. But those who did have a relationship, their words were far more comforting, just naturally, right? Therefore, their words and their presence was far more. Their presence was felt more, and their absence was also felt more, because now you put yourself in a situation that you have to come and you have to support because you have a relationship. That is also the fear of relationships. That can I always show up for this person? Allah makes it happen, right? Allah gives us the will and the power to do it. Okay, we'll take it from the brother side as well, inshallah. Brothers, you have any questions? Brothers normally learn everything before they come into the halaqah, so it's nothing new, right? It's all on repeat. And anything at all, anything that within the topic, of course, I'm not going to be answering questions about whether or not A or B is halal. You guys ask your local shuyukh that. But we're good. Sisters, anything else based on the topic? That's great. Go ahead, a little more.
So, based on my understanding of what you were saying, pretty much like what goes around comes around, and do good and you will receive. Don't be bad, because then bad things will happen to you. What would you say is like the balance, I guess, between like having sabr and then like I guess standing up for yourself if you have a situation where somebody is constantly, being the better person, and then the other person takes advantage, and it's like they have the cake and eat it too. So I guess what's the balance?
Yeah, that's a great question.
There's like somebody's health is taken.
Yeah. So I mean, I think there's a difference of being. Like, the question is, what's the difference between being patient and being oppressed? Because those are two completely different things, right? Before that, you also mentioned what comes around goes around. Yes, that's the concept. But what comes around goes around in the sense of doing it for the right purpose. So, like, yani man ahabba lillah. So it's being done with that intentionality as well. That I'm doing it for them. So Allah supports me, because we don't believe in karma, right? Like, that's not what we believe in. So we believe in that a person does it for the right purpose, and Allah then goes ahead and reciprocates them either in thawab or in actual support in their life, whatever they need, right? So that's that concept. And in regards to being madloom, being oppressed, to the extent that the same thing's happening over and over again by someone, whether it be a family member, relative, or just someone in your life, I think based upon where that relationship is. So if they're from the maharim meaning like your parents, your children, your nephews, your nieces, your aunts, your uncles, these are all maharim, right? So Imam Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah says that within your maharim, you start distancing yourself from them without cutting them off, right? Because at the end of the day, if a person is madloom, their responsibility, their fard in that moment is to leave that dhulm. They have to do their best to find a way out, whether or not that's through support from the community, support from the mashayikh, support from the authority, whatever that may look like. They have to find their way out from that dhulm. If they remain in that dhulm, they are within their ability, of course, within their means. That means they're not fulfilling their fard at that time. They have to try their best to get rid of that dhulm in their life. So the best way to get rid of that dhulm is to create distance, right? And when you create distance, it kind of gives you a barrier between their dhulm and what you are experiencing, and you shouldn't feel bad about it. Min al-mahalim, these are people that are close relatives and family members, because you can't necessarily cut them off completely, right? Now, at different tiers, parents, we can distance them to a certain degree that we can still help them, because regardless of how they treat us per se, we are still liable and questionable for helping them. But that's our response. Allah will ask us about that. هذا من مسؤوليتنا. That's within are the things that Allah will question us about. But if it's amongst those that we're not responsible for, we can distance them a little bit more without cutting them off. The Prophet did not cut off relatives, even those who were harsh towards him. But if it's anyone else, for anyone else outside of that, we can technically cut them off, right? And whenever we see them, we say salam to them, we go to their janazah. The haqq of a Muslim is 5. Haqqul Muslim al-Muslimi khamsun. There's 5 rights that every believer has upon each other. Rights in this hadith means fard. There are 5 obligations that we hold upon each other. That if I don't do it for you, I will be sinful, and if you don't do it for me, you will be sinful. It's like fard, you have to do it. This is not, when I mention the 5 things, you might think, wow, this is a great person. No, this is fard. It's like praying 5 times salat. No one can flex if they pray 5 times salat. Like, that's what we have to do. Yes, it's good, but a person prays tahajjud, they can feel even better, right? Like, now they can, feel special about what they're doing. The first is Raddus salam, just responding to what? Salam. So if I distance myself from someone, I still should respond to their salam, because that's a fard upon them, right? Number 2, ijabatu da'wah. I must respond to their invitation. It doesn't say you have to accept their invitation. You have to what? And people get this confused at times, that we have like 25 different apps to RSVP. That makes no sense. If the person is inviting you, tell them yes or no. Like, why are you like, you're not that special that they're going to care if you say no. Myself too. Like, we're not like, if I say no, oh my God, he's going to feel, no, he's not. Like, he's getting married. He's not worried about you. Like, if you don't come, he's like, oh my God, you're not coming to my wedding. I'm not going to have my wedding. Okay, thank you. One more plate that I can give someone else. That's the reality, right? Like, so just responding is what the goal is. Make sure we respond. So you have to respond still, right? You don't have to give reasons per se, especially in this state where you are worried about your own mental health and support. Number 3 is tashmitul atish, which means to say yarhamukallah. When someone sneezes, we say yarhamukallah, meaning if there's a haqq that they are in need of and we're around, we should give it to them, right? So yarhamukallah is like, Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah says yarhamukallah means we should make dua for them when they need it. That's what yarhamukallah is, a dua. That's why. So if we know they're going through something, make dua for them, even though you're distance yourself from them. Number 4 is iyadatul marid, visiting the sick, right? So visiting those who are sick. If they become very ill, we should still visit them, because that is a haqq. And the last one is اتباع الجنائز, going for their janazah. So these are the haqs of fara'id, right? That's very limited. So I can distance myself from anyone because one of the maqasid of sharia is the protection of life, the protection of religion, and the protection of intellect. The protection of intellect and your mind, your mental state. So if that is one of the objectives of sharia, if something is compromising that to the extent that it is not a phobia but is actually a reality, then this person should what? Distance himself. And there should not be force within this religious obligation or this false assumption of the religious obligation of just being what? Kind. Right? Because there's three options that we have. We have number one, the first option that we have is that we forgive them. That's fa'fu anhum, right? Forgive them. Khalas. Second option that we have is fasbir sabran jamila, is that we remain patient. What remain patient means is that we continue giving them their rights and holding up our part of the relationship the best we can. That's sabr. And the third is wahjurhum hajran jamila, which comes from the word of hijrah, which literally means to migrate from them. We what? Distance ourselves, our children, our family, because it's toxic. And if we don't distance ourselves, it's going to have the opposite effect. So there is no religious obligation to remain oppressed. Rather, the religious obligation would be to run away from that oppression to the best of our abilities, the best of our means. Naam, Habibi.
As a follow-up to that question, two questions. One, have you seen the common problem where people are confused if they are the oppressed or the oppressor? Sometimes you see a lot of cases where people think they are oppressed, yet they may be the oppressor, and if they don't know to go to the automatic mashayikh to really analyze the situation, that can be a situation of clarity. So just some comments on how can people protect themselves from the evil of the nafs
Subhanallah.
as to whether they be oppressed or the oppressor. The other thing is, we were talking about my law firm earlier, we get a lot of divorce cases. And it's almost every case, it's the same complaints the spouses have against each other.
They both think they're oppressed.
They both think they're oppressed, and they both think they need to run away. And there isn't really this concept anymore
Of rectification and reconciliation.
Well, I'm oppressed, I need to run away. But, whatever problems you think you're going to have it again and again. So
SubhanAllah. That's a great point. That's why I mentioned, is it a reality or is it a phobia? Or is it just like an assumption or an assumed concept? But I think the first part of the question, Habibuna, was a very good point. Like, a lot of times, Zulaykha thought she was oppressed, right? And so did the oppressors that were part of the journey of Yusuf alayhi salam, the brothers. They thought they were being oppressed, that their father was taking their right? That's what they assumed, and that's why they did what they did. So this, the idea of oppression, at least in the religious text, is not subjective. It's very clear, it's objective. Like, your rights are not being given to you, and your responsibilities, that the rights that people have upon you are not being given to you, and rather than that, they're taking away your huquq. So it's like a two-tier, right? So it's not relative, it's not anecdotal, it's not as emotional as we make it seem. It's actually very clearly structured through metrics. That person A is not giving you this, and person B is taking away from you this, that is seen to be oppression. Like a child, how can a son or daughter say they're oppressed? Because parents have certain obligations upon the children, such as their household needs and their financial needs and their educational needs. Now, if they're not being given that to the standard of their society, not saying that it has to be to the standard of someone else, to standard of their society, then that means potentially they can be considered to be oppressed, right? Especially if the means are there. If the means are not there, obviously it's not called oppression. That is just the means that they have. We don't give zakat based upon how much my neighbor has. We give zakat based upon how much I have. Like, it's all based upon that person's capacity. So a lot of youngsters would say, my parents oppress me. Like, especially when it comes to our boarding school. How do your parents oppress you? They don't let me have a phone yet. I'm like, bro, the others have oppressed their children by giving them a phone. Like, it's not oppression, right? So that's a real reality that everyone screams oppression nowadays, right? Zulaykha screamed it as well. And the brothers of Yusuf used that as a form of justification for getting rid of Yusuf alayhi salam as well. So there needs to be a reality in that scheme. Sometimes the oppressed or the oppressor, or rather the oppressed, feels like they're the oppressor too, though. So, for example, if spouses or children, they feel this guilt trip of not being able to do more, despite the fact that they're being oppressed, sometimes they feel like they're the oppressor. Like, oh, I'm not doing. No, you're not. Like, هذا حقك. This is what your rights were. Go ahead and do them. But what I mentioned earlier, I feel like that was an important point, that we should aim for ihsan. Ihsan means to give more than what that person deserves, and to take less than what your rights are. Like everyone is asking for their rights. Imagine if in a marriage, each person is competing in how they can do more than what their responsibilities are. Like we stop on the threshold of our responsibilities. That's where we stop. There's no concept of, okay, this is not my responsibility, how can I do it? But that is what ihsan was. No one wins your heart because they do for you what they have to do for you. They win your heart because they do for you what they don't have to do for you. That's how you win someone's heart. Like zakat is 2.5% of your wealth. If you give it to someone, you don't expect them to thank you too much. That is your zakat. But the moment you go out of your way and give them something else, that is where you win their heart. Right? The Prophet won the people's hearts because he didn't have a 9 to 5 clock in, clock out schedule that you could meet him in. He was a Habib. He was always available to the degree of his responsibility, so people fell in love with him, right? So I do think Brother Hassan brought up a great point, that a person should engage. This yesterday we had a program at Miftah, and people were using the words like impulsive, religious suffocation, or that was heavy. I'm like, man, those are some heavy words, right? Like we gotta be careful with these words, because sometimes we just use them because of the fact that everyone is using them, and it doesn't have any merit in the metrics of life, right? It should have a metric, and that metric is very clearly set by the objective truth of deen, right? And that's where we can gauge it. But not everyone will respond to it the same way. Someone may be able to use, even though their rights are being taken from them, they still may feel okay, in the sense that, like, you know what, I feel comfortable because I have whatever it may be, other support systems. I have, I'm very secure in what I have. But if someone does feel the way you were saying, then that's not sabr anymore. That's just, you're breaking yourself down for no reason. Because it is true that a person that is oppressed and remains oppressed has a hard time helping people later on as well. Because their nature becomes that they're always afraid to be oppressed again. So this is why the idea of Bani Israel was Bani Israel. They were enslaved for so long that when they were taken out of their situation, they had a hard time believing in that they were empowered, right? So we shouldn't stay in that state if we don't need to, right? And if we can find a way out. But 100%, the first option in the Quran is always reconciliation. Allah speaks about that in Surah Hujurat, that whenever there's a disagreement, not oppression, disagreement, we try to create some form of reconciliation. فَأَصْلِحُ بَيْنَهُمَا صُلْحًا, and we do so by bringing someone in between as a arbitrator or a mediator in between that can help look at both sides of the story and give us the right advice. And we have to be comfortable enough doing that if we want the truth to prevail, not the personality to prevail. Normally we always want the person to succeed, not the truth to succeed. It's interesting in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, the child that became a witness did not say Yusuf was innocent. He didn't say that, right? It's pretty interesting. Yusuf was innocent, obviously. The child actually said what? The shirt. Meaning the child gave reason that produced the truth. He didn't simply stand for the personality, he stood for the truth. اِعْدِلُوا وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ. You stand for the truth even if it's against yourself and your family. So we're more caught up in standing for the person than we are in standing up for the truth. So like if you're, people that are married, they know that if the daughter speaks to her parents about something, there's no way my daughter is wrong, right? Like there's no way. Like how could she ever mess up? And if the son speaks to his mother about something, you better forget it, right? That daughter's gonna have hell now because there's no way my son, mera beta, because that's questioning their parenting, right? It's not really, because we're parented by society as well, right? So there's definitely a sense of trying our best to see the objective truth in it and not being caught up by the personality of who is right and who is wrong, but letting the truth be the loudest voice in the room. Wallahu a'lam. I hope, Habibuna, any other reflection on that, Habibi? Anyone else? Any follow-up point, follow-up question? May Allah allow us to remain patient, and allow us to be such that even in our moments of difficulty, we're able to remain steadfast upon the truth. Patience doesn't mean that we don't have emotions. Patience means that our output of ibadah doesn't change. Right? Imam Shuti rahimahullah says, when he was asked, this is one of my favorite definitions of istiqamah. When he was asked, I mentioned earlier the definition of ihsan that I really rely upon when it comes to the code of conduct that we should be holding ourselves accountable to. Someone asked Imam Suyuti rahimullah, what is the definition of istiqamah? And he said, لا يتغير عمله بتغير أحواله. This person's output of good is not impacted by their state in their situations. Like whether or not they're in a situation of shukr or sabr, they're still praying salat on time. They're still there for people. They're still doing what they're supposed to do. That you can't even tell the difference to a certain degree. Naturally, there is a spectrum. Again, I mentioned earlier, there's a justified spectrum. That maybe now they're not giving extra sadaqah, they're only giving 2.5% of their zakat because they're challenged by losing their job. Like there's a spectrum, right? But it's justified. It's not that I lost my job, I won't give zakat anymore. Right? That's what istiqamah is. To be consistent in our output despite the situational challenges that are around us, which is the opposite of majority of human beings, that we make our situation a prerequisite of our ibadah. If I'm in this state, then I will go ahead and do that. We don't understand that ibadah is what then creates that positive state, right? It's actually the opposite effect. Wallahu a'lam. May Allah reward you all, may Allah bless you all. It's always beautiful coming to Tampa. I really believe that Tampa is one of the, I don't want to use the word underrated city because that makes it feel like it's an underrated city, right? But I really believe Tampa is one of those like hidden gems of communities. And I was speaking to that. Earlier, the reason why I got a little delayed, I was meeting Sheikh Umar Hussaini and Sheikh Kamal was in town. And we're speaking about Tampa. Tampa is a hidden gem, man. Like beautiful masajid, beautiful community, good weather. Not today. Today is, قُلْ نَارُ جَهَنَّمَ أَشَدُّ حَرًّا, right? I came out, my flight landed like at 8 a.m. And I thought I walked out like in the middle of like Zawal, like 12 p.m. It was so hot, right? And obviously wearing my vest, my turban, like man, now I understand why the Malikis have a soft aura, right? But nonetheless, the idea was like your community is blessed. I know we're from Michigan. Michigan is like top, then there's like Dallas number 2, right? Then Chicago number 3. But you have all these beautiful large Muslim communities where they're doing good work as well. But mashallah, your community is blessed, and may Allah give you more and more. Every time I speak to scholars about let's go to Tampa for a program, no one ever says no. Like, it's really interesting. I'm telling the truth because we host in Miftah these different mashayikh, and every time we ask them, let's go to this city, I'm not sure about that one, right? But when you say Tampa, like, yeah, let's go to Tampa. And it's not because you guys have, it's not because of anything else. Your food scene is horrible. You're like, everything else is not that. It's really because of your what? Your Muslim community, mashallah. And that's a beautiful thing to have. Everyone wants to go to Toronto, but that's because their food scene. That's not because of any other reason, right? So may Allah continue to grow you guys, bless you guys, and allow you guys to stay united. Tampa is one of those rare communities, someone like Michigan, that is very fluid in their differences. So it's not like you don't have a strong, kind of polarized community, and hopefully it stays that way. Everyone is kind of working together. There's a sense of love and mahabba. There's not that much resistance, and hopefully it stays that way. And then you have these amazing Islamic schools that are serving the need of your community. Like, you don't even understand how necessary it is, because those Islamic schools protect people's iman, even though they may have their own flaws. Well, parents have their flaws. We don't call parents bad, right? So Islamic schools also have their limitations and flaws. And of course, Florida actually subsidizes students, so you guys actually get paid for it too, unlike Michigan, where I think Florida now has a setup that they actually support the schools to have paid stipends for their students. Hence, I'm probably going to move to Florida. I'm investing around, inshallah. Allah bless you all, reward you all. Allah bless your community, bless your shabab, bless the young brothers and sisters that allowed us to be here. Bless your sheikh, bless your imam, Sister Jawaria for helping us put this together, and all the other sisters and brothers that were involved. And allow us to keep coming back again and again in your community. Inshallah, we all see you tonight. Inshallah, Mufti Kamani will be very upset that if you all came to this but didn't come to his program. Okay, I'm just telling you. So I said I'm going to send him a picture of all of you, and if you're not there tonight, he's going to be upset. So make sure you're there, inshallah. We're on a 3-city tour, so I'm sure he's pretty tired as well, but he's making his way here. So I hope you all are able to show up as well, inshallah ta'ala. There's no sign up needed. Just walk in, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.